Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dojo Live. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be joining you along with America Guerrero this Thursday, February 2nd, 2023.
Hey, it's nice to be back.
Yes, good to have you back, America. You've been out for a while. And of course, the guest of honor, the most important person of today's show is Richard Vincent, who is the CEO and co-founder of FundamentalVR. Richard, thank you so much for joining us.
Kim, America, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, it really is our pleasure. And I'm super excited about today's show, especially because it's coming off of, for our viewers who might already know this, we had a 4-part metaverse series throughout the whole month of January. We got to kind of explore what that's about. And one of the comments was, it's not about the metaverse, but this idea of metaverses. And I think that really taps into what you're doing at FundamentalVR, right? And creating this own type of metaverse for yourself, specifically in the medical field. But before we get into the fundamentals of FundamentalVR, we'd love to get to know you a bit more, Richard. If you could please share your story, your passion, and sort of what led up to founding your company. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. I'm delighted to. And again, thanks for having me on here. It's a real honor. So, as you can tell from my accent, I'm in the UK at the moment. I spend my life between the UK and the US. But my story, I was born in London. Always had an entrepreneurial streak in me. I think I started my first business probably when I was 18, which was a few years ago now. In property development. That didn't go so well, but it was a good learning experience. I studied marketing and technology in the UK, started in large businesses, big corporates, and then moved to small. I always had that pull towards smaller businesses. And like I said, I've been around a while. So in the 90s, I got into technology and started my first successful business with my co-founder, Chris, who actually is also my co-founder on FundamentalVR, working in the space of mobile in kind of the 2000s. And we could see that technology was going to change the way that everybody interacts. And so
And you were absolutely right.
Yeah, we could see where it was going to go. So we built a business in that, and that took me to the States for the first time. So I lived in Manhattan for a few years in the 2000s and finally sold that business in 2012, and then took a look at technology again and saying, what's next? What's coming down the line? And that's when I first bumped into immersive technology, and was actually lucky enough to bump into the founders of Oculus, so Palmer Luckey and Nate Mitchell, really early on. And from that, I was sold. I could see immersive was going to be amazing. Virtual reality was going to be high impact. The question for me as a technologist was, where's it going to land? Where's it going to have the most impact? And so I, with Chris, probably spent about 2 years doing a lot of exploration around the use cases, potential use cases for VR. This is before there was even a VR headset back in the market, in the new thing. And we finally landed on surgical because we could see what a big problem that was. Medical training and surgical was a big problem. We could see it could have an impact there. And so that set the journey for FundamentalVR, and we've been on that now since 2015, building the business and building the use cases. It's been a really exciting journey. And when you start in a technology that is really nascent, it can be quite a hard journey, but it's been a really fun one to kind of put that technology together and then use it for such an amazing use case. So I'm really excited to tell you more about that.
Yes, and I think that's great. So let's talk about this use case and the specifics of FundamentalVR. Exactly who are you and what's the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, great. So we're a health tech business. We work in healthcare and technology, and the problem we're solving really is one that's been around for 150 years or so, which is it's really complicated doing medical procedures, surgical procedures. The learning curve is really long. The opportunity to learn is challenging often. You're dealing with real patients in many cases, and so what we've been able to do with the business is try and get involved in that problem of skills transfer, of learning technique, and help to move that needle faster, or move that dial faster by accelerating the learning curve. So the business is it's a platform. It's called FundamentalVR as the company, but the platform is called Fundamental Surgery. And on that platform, we host and develop and deliver surgical VR training. And it's a combination of immersion that comes from VR, and I'm sure lots of your viewers know VR well. I'm sure you've tried it. VR puts you in the space. It gives you situational awareness. It gives you a sense of presence. It can be amazing, but it doesn't give you, in most cases, a sense of touch. And so that's where we've added what we call haptic technology. And we spent the last 5 years building this capability and patenting, putting patents on it to try and protect some of it, so that we can deliver the sense of touch, of resistance, of force feedback, of weight, so that when you're working with a virtual patient and learning a new procedure, you can feel, see, and act in a way that's pretty close to real life and allows us to really get a good skills transfer across to the people who need to learn those new skills or techniques.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I'm really excited to dive into it. I've got lots of questions, I think, around how this works and how it's being applied. And of course, use cases and the differences that it's making in real lives. But the topic of today's show, and specifically that we're diving into, is
the future of medical training. Accelerate human competency via precision VR simulation. How can VR and haptic technology enhance human capability and improve patient care? So please share with us why this topic is important for today's show.
Yeah, delighted to. And it's quite a mouthful, isn't it? So apologies for that. So skills training, skills competency, moving the way that people learn and acquire skills is, like I said, it's a problem that's been around for a very long time, and it's a really important one. So key point here is we're talking about human beings, real people. Whilst my business deals in virtual, the end impact is in human lives. So the impact in a human life of having an adverse outcome to a surgical intervention can be life-changing. It's one of the biggest causes of death in the US and across the world is poor medical interventions, and surgery is one of those. So anything we can do to change that is for the good body, and it's not just the human cost, the financial cost of those areas can be massive as well. So again, we're addressing a really big, challenging space. So what we do, our part to play in that is really to come alongside the traditional modalities of training, and those would be classroom type training, that would be working with specimens and trying to understand there, as well as working in the operating room, and actually learning kind of on the job, kind of the apprenticeship model. So what we can do is virtualize all of that, and through that process give those health professionals the opportunity to just familiarize and practice and get used to that technique again and again. And I don't like to use the sports analogy, but if you give me a baseball bat, and I'm going to go up to the plate, I'm going to swing it a few times first to just get myself used to it and get ready for that interaction. Well, our system is very similar to that. It gives the opportunity for the surgeon to rehearse, to go through that, to swing the surgical bat, to stay with that analogy, and understand what they're going into, so that they can have a better outcome. And that's good for the patient, it's good for the surgeon, it's good for the health system.
What kind of surgeries can you practice with this kind of technology?
Well, we've yet to find one we can't work with. We've worked across multiple segments. So we're in urology, we're in cardiology, endovascular. So that's all heart-related things. We're in interventional, where you're dealing with things within different vascular systems. Then into big movements as well. So orthopedics, where you're dealing with gross movements around repairing bones and structures in that way. We've not really found a limit there. And there's so much innovation in healthcare at the moment. It's accelerating so fast that the job of staying on top of that for our users, our end users, the surgeons and their teams, it's just getting ever more challenging. Robotics, for instance. Robotics is touching pretty much every segment of medical care and surgery, and there's massive complexities there. But here's the thing, right? You have a learning curve, and that might be 20 cases, it might be 60 cases, and each of those cases potentially is an adverse outcome if it's not prepared away from the patient. So again, that's kind of where we try and fit ourselves in, is to provide that opportunity for rehearsal of the right outcome, but also deliberate failure. If I have a go at trying to do something and deliberately find out what goes wrong with it by doing something incorrectly, I learn something.
I'd never thought about it that way. Like the empathy, or the idea of like, what would happen if I just did this? Like, because in my mind, it's always like, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it right every single time. The flexibility to do it wrong without any actual negative outcome is fascinating.
Yeah. And I think, again, we listen hard to the people using our systems, and they really value the opportunity to do just that, to try different techniques, to try different approaches and see what happens. And the way we've built our platform allows us to provide that sort of flexibility. And like I said, when we, it's great to immerse yourself in, and perhaps if I just explain a little bit of how it works.
Yes, please.
Probably a little bit abstract. So we would put someone into a virtual room. They might be joined by 1, 2, 30 other people, depending on what's going on. They'd all join virtually. So first thing is, they don't need to travel to come together to do this. They'd be in separate time zones, separate geographies, and could just virtually come together. We would then present them with a patient case and a physical patient, virtual physical patient in front of them. And then they'd use our haptic system, which might be a set of gloves. It might be a grounded system that's replicating whatever tools they're using. So it could be a scalpel, it might be a drill, it could be a catheter, and it will replicate the feeling of using that tool, so that in the virtual reality space, they see the tool, they see the patient, and they feel the interaction that happens between the two. And because of the way that it's structured, we can give pinpoint accurate feedback on the way that they're progressing. So they get to understand not that they had a okay interaction, looks like it happened and went the right way. We can say down to the sub-millimeter level, this is what happened, this is the probable outcome of that, and this is what you might want to try different in the next occasion. And they start to build up a brilliant profile of how that interaction goes.
And that's interesting, because it's, I think, not just the technology that might be giving this feedback and these observations and suggestions, but the individuals who are also in the room, right, with you, like the ability to learn from an expert, or to ask questions and say, why did you do it that way? I've always done it this way. And opening up this entire world, literal world, you could be from all over the world of possibilities.
Yes.
Exactly that, yeah. And like I said, there's so much innovation in this marketplace, and so many great skills within some of the lead surgeons. The challenge is, often, if I was to create a new technique, the challenge for me to get that distributed worldwide traditionally would be my ability to get around the world and share that knowledge and skill with each individual surgeon I want to meet with, or do it within conferences and such like. So it's a heavy load on me. What we can do is, in effect, digitize that expertise and bring them in virtually, either in real time, they're there at that time, or indeed record it and allow them to be there using our AI as a virtual avatar to disseminate that knowledge. So suddenly you digitize skills and you propagate them and democratize them in a way that's really never been possible.
I think the propagation and the exponential growth of it is what's absolutely. I just see the absolute impact on human health throughout the globe. America, you were going to say something.
No, I'm just imagining right now. Imagine that we want to practice a surgery right now. You, Kim, you, as us, and we have 3D prints. So, for example, maybe in the future there is going to be a possibility to print a heart for the three of us. So we all three have the organ here, and we can practice with the VR in addition to that technology. So I think that could be possible. Or how do you think that is going to evolutionate everything?
Or is it the VR representation of the heart, where the physical 3D part isn't even?
Do you think we could add hardware to this, like organs?
Well, so
like fake organs.
So we're creating them already in the virtual space. So it's not a case of it looks a bit like the heart. You know, the heart is constructed with every level of detail within it, with all of the different electrical impulses that are happening within that, and therefore we can then encourage that to behave in certain ways. So that's happening already. And again, if the three of us weren't on this virtual call in this way, but rather we're sitting together in one of our VR environments, we could together see that heart in action, and we could then create, you know, almost a supervision, not supervision as an oversight, but rather I have superpowers, a supervision of that heart, so that we could start to peel away elements of it and understand how the things that you're doing, wherever they are affecting that in real time. So that can happen, and that's what we're doing today with the platform.
And it's fascinating because your virtual heart, I mean, let's take the 3D printed heart example versus your virtual heart. A 3D printed heart is not beating. And if it were to be beating, I think it would be an extremely expensive piece of hardware to be fiddling around with, right? But your virtual heart is acting and moving exactly what I would have to deal with in a real life scenario. I mean, I'm not a surgeon. I've never, I'm not made of that kind of stuff. But like, when I think about it, you're like, well, yeah, like if you're performing surgery on a heart, that heart is still working while you're, you know, doing your thing. Like, that's crazy. Like, we can simulate those beats, that movement, and have to know that I am going to have to deal with this in real life. Like,
absolutely, yeah. And in most cardio surgical procedures these days, you know, it's not done through open surgery, so you're not seeing the heart, but rather you're entering through a vascular entry point,
cameras and
somewhere away, using imaging and such like. And again, what we've been able to do is to create all of that real-time virtual imaging, so that we can replicate all the different scenarios that you might face.
And is there sound involved in this? So we talked the haptic, like the touch, the pressure, all that stuff, and the visual piece. What about the sound piece? Because I'm going to borrow this great word that I picked up from the subtitles of Stranger Things, and that's the word squelch. I imagine that the sounds of surgery are quite disgusting. Is this a way to prepare people for that as well? Like, if you've got like, you know, especially like pre-med folks or people who've never done this before, I imagine that the first time you're actually quite hands-on, there's a lot of surprises of like, oh God, I wasn't expecting that. And this is a way to kind of make that a bit better.
Or smelling it.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, Richard, you gotta. That's the next dimension for Fundamental VR. An iron capsule underneath your nose.
all possible. So let me take them in turn. So yeah, absolutely. The sound is important. I don't know about the Stranger Things squelch, but certainly the contextual sound that goes on within that room, it's distracting. It's important that it's there. There's a team around you that are talking to you. There's information coming at you. We need to be able to handle that as well. So where the education need is such, we absolutely can bring that in. Smell's an interesting one. So there are a few pieces of technology out there. We don't make it. We don't make any hardware. In fact, we just software. We partner with good hardware companies for this. And there are a couple of hardware companies out there that are focusing on VR connected smelling technology, so that you can have it here. You know, I've spent many times in an operating room, and some of the smells in an operating room can be quite interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could certainly give familiarization to that. But another point
I read this tweet that cracked me up. It's funny, not funny, but it was like a medical students in a real life experience where they're like observing a surgeon and there's a smell and the surgeon is like, I need to know if somebody farted because if not, I may have perforated the bowel. Like I need to know this. And the med student's like, it was me.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But listen, this is the other thing though. This isn't just med students. This isn't residents. You know, most of the work that we do is actually later on in the careers of these individuals, whether they're the support staff, the nurses, the techs, or the surgeons themselves, or the physicians, because of some procedures aren't surgeon led. In all of those cases, it's often later in the career that these are actually, because the challenge is, again, there's so much change happening so quickly, so many new techniques coming through that, you know, I may well have done a technique for the last 15 years, but there's a part of that procedure I need to understand the new nuance to that. And that's again where we come in. And what happens is we work with the creators of those new pieces of medical technology. So whether it's med device or pharmaceutical, gene therapies, for instance, those areas. So that they can understand and adopt that new technique, which may only be, you know, a small slice of the whole procedure, but it's a thing that can be a game changer. And again, they still need that chance to rehearse. So they're just learning a new part within the whole process, as opposed to, wow, I've never done a back operation before. I've never done a facetectomy. This is my first time. That's one scenario, but another one can be, I've never implanted this new type of device in the spine. I need to understand
better and faster. And that's, I think, that part of the enhancing the human capability and improving the patient care piece of what we're talking about today. I think I read, and correct me if my number's wrong, that you're now deployed in like 30-ish countries.
That's
now,
right.
I imagine, I mean, let's talk about those countries, because I think it's easy to think, you know, these first world, tech first, wow. But when it comes to actually improving patient care, my mind goes to places like, I don't know, Nigeria or these places, Namibia, where they literally have maybe a literal handful of specialists available for certain care. And like when you're talking about the need for those individuals, the doctors, specialists, to increase their knowledge, the value of what that might mean for people's lives if that person has to leave country for 2 months, a month, even 2 months, 3, 4, 6, to be able to increase their capabilities. And at the same time, you know, having a huge impact on the reach of where they're from. So is it just this first world elements, or are you finding that in more developing areas, your technology is even more important?
Great question. And you're right, that the need often is inversely related to the economic capability of the region. So the need's universal. And we have seen quite a lot of deployment into some quite far away and distant locations. There is an economic part to this, which is, you know, it isn't inexpensive. It isn't anywhere near as expensive as the consequences of not doing it. And it's really cheap compared to any of the traditional ways of training. So it's a big plus up on that. But we still need someone to carry that cost for those organizations. So we work with some charities. And so I can give you a real example. We work with Orbis, the eye charity, and they specialize in trying to democratize the knowledge around eye operations, and particularly cataracts. So they have this flying hospital. It flies in with a jumbo jet, lands, they teach people, they undertake a whole bunch of procedures, then it's off again. Well, what we're able to do is send our system ahead of the jumbo and pre-train those physicians that are in market in the procedure, so that they're just another step forward before that hands-on experience comes to them with the flying eye jumbo jet when it appears. So we've been deployed with them now into, I think it's about 14 different countries, as wow. You know, as far away as Myanmar, you know, India, Pakistan, and these systems, again, you know, they're small. You can FedEx them, so it's not like wow. They have to stay in one place. You just, when it's done in a place, you box it up and send it on.
In terms of efficiency in conjunction with effectivity, if that's the right two words to use, have Orbis, is that the name of the Okay, have they been able to see an increase in terms of we've had more reach, more patients that we're able to care for, and in a better way as a result of Fundamental VR being present?
It's had a direct impact. Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations. I think that's extremely exciting. I do have a question. I know that in terms of Fundamental VR, you are the software component of this. But when it comes to like this metaverse elements, this mix of virtual reality with haptic technology and software, which side is moving faster? Is it the software side, the hardware side, or are they pretty much in tandem? Where do you expect the big boom or the growth to happen?
So software moves faster for sure, because it's a lot easier to iterate on it than it is on the hardware side, which is one of the reasons we keep ourselves away from the hardware side. But also, there are some big companies investing a lot of money in that hardware, and so we want to stand on the shoulders of those giants. So we're really delighted to partner up with with Meta and with Pico and with HTC and Microsoft and use what they're creating on the vision side of it, the VR side. And then also on the haptic side, there's a number of great companies, Haptex over in Seattle and Happily up in Montreal, who are really breaking some great ground in the hardware part of that tech. And we just love to ingest our software in and make it do the things we need it to do in our use case. And so that just works really well. It's a great partnership. And I guess the reason we've done that is, with everything moving so fast, we want to be able to future-proof for our customers. We don't want them to get caught kind of down a black hole of technology. So we spend our time kind of looking at all of those different headsets, those different haptic technologies, and adopting the ones and bringing them onto our platform, the ones that we think are going to be most useful, so that our customers can just focus on their business, which is their medical devices, their pharmaceutical, their healthcare systems, and the training they need to achieve, not on, is that hardware going to be good enough? Should I be over here now? They need somebody else to deal with that in most cases, and that's really where we try and support them.
Is everything in English?
Not at all. No. Many languages. I don't have a number for you, but certainly I would say 15 or so different languages we're translated into, with different, obviously based on where it's going. So again, because it's over-the-air technology, our customers choose where they want to send it, and they choose the languages they want it to work in.
That's so great. I think this is super fun. And I think even for the software side and the engineers and the individuals who are able to put this together, what does that process look like for you? Because I mean, in terms of, I can only imagine the amount of research and pieces that have to go into it before you even get to the actual coding, right? Like what's this process to make sure that this is a true representation of the heart, for example, or even understanding how the medical procedure is supposed to, progress? I mean, what goes into the development of this code?
There's a lot of work, a lot of design work, a lot of experts that need to come in. So in-house, we have a big medical team. We have a big panel of working surgeons who are in the operating room every day that we lean on. There are key opinion leaders. Our customers have their experts as well. So we plug them together. And through that process, we've got really efficient and effective, I think, at sucking the knowledge from the experts in the field into our design process. And then we have a team of designers and product owners who will construct the flow of the different procedures. And yeah, for the technicians and the people who are encoding, who are listening or watching this, we use a system we call stages and gates, which is all about working out the risks and the design effectively before you start coding. Because the minute we put a team of, let's say, 30 coders onto it, it gets really expensive. So we want to know that it's going to work and it's going to be the right things that we're deploying that resource against before we get to there. So we have a stage and gate process. It's a 5-stage and gates process that our production team rigorously manage, so that we don't end up in a place where we go, ta-da, it's done, and they go, well, yeah, that's actually not the way it works. That's a bad outcome, right, for everybody. So so we lean really hard. The first thing I did when we started this business back in 2015, the first people I brought on board were a collection of really, really amazing surgeons and educators who, they could see the potential here. We didn't even have a product, but they could see the potential, and they said, look, we'll invest time to help try and get this ball rolling, because we can see what it could do over the long term. And we've just built that team up and up to be able to take on those challenges.
Wow, that's great. We've come to the end of our half hour today, Richard, but I do have one final question, because, this approach, the stage and gate versus, I suppose, traditional, what's now becoming a very commonplace agile methodology it's quite different, right? This idea of fail fast, move fast doesn't work for you. And I think that's great. With all of this expertise that you've, experience that you've built up, and this approach of what it takes to have a smooth running kind of operation, what's maybe some words of wisdom that you would like to share with other leaders like yourself, or those people who are looking to start something new? What would be what you'd say, I did this worked really well, and this would be my suggestion, and also this really didn't work, I would counsel you not to do this?
Wow. I think anyone who's done a startup or multiple ones, it will know, there are no straight lines. So you have to write a really good business plan, because you don't get backers otherwise, but you also need to educate them that it's not actually going to happen along the business plan. It's going to have a very different set of inputs and outputs as you work your way through the different phases of development, from product market fit through to full commercialization and scale up. I guess what's worked really well, getting the culture right really early is really important. Making sure that you get the right foundation stones. I mean, we still talk about our team being the foundation stones of the business. We've got up to now 130, 40 people in the business. I still see them as the foundation stones, and they set the culture, they set the tone, they set the pace. And you get that wrong, the first few and the continued few that come after that, if you get that wrong, you can be in all sorts of trouble. So I think that's probably my most universal point. I think the other point, if you're raising money, make sure, everybody, it's a hard journey to raise money, but it's a fun one. Picking your backers carefully to make sure that you've got the people who can journey with you, that understand that there are no straight lines, and that the business plan will have to flex, and are ready to do that with you, rather than sort of sit on the side and judge you, is I think probably the two most important things I've taken out of my 20 plus years of doing this.
Wow. Very, very solid words of advice. Thank you so much. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom with us, all about fundamental VR with us. We certainly wish you and your team nothing but success in 2023 and beyond, because I think what you're doing really is this next wave. You're on 2 for 2, mobile technology, and then what's up with immersive technology as well. Congratulations.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks,
Perfect.
America.
Yes, our pleasure. Thank you, America. So yes, stick around for just a moment as we go off air. But before we do, I'd like to remind our viewers to join us on Monday morning for our recap show, as we will talk all about our takeaways from Richard's show, as well as introducing next week's shows as well. So until then, have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you at 10 o'clock Pacific Monday morning. Bye for now.